The anime begins in Japan, with an orphan boy named Kazuya, who was on his way to a convenience store to get a meal for himself when he saw a thug about to attack two girls. Without hesitation, he jumped in to save them, and in the process, he got stabbed by the thug and died. At least, before his final breath, he was happy knowing he saved the two girls behind him. With that, he opened his eyes in a whole new world as a 3-year-old boy named Kane. Naturally, Kane freaked out upon seeing himself as a completely different person, but his mother, Sylvia, thought it was a normal reaction since Kane had been unconscious for a week. That was why she and others left to bring some soup for him. Left alone for a moment, Kane was able to piece together the situation, that he had been reincarnated after saving those girls. While checking himself out in disbelief, Sylvia returned and, misinterpreting the situation, thought Kane needed a nappy change. After that, he got many answers from Sylvia. He learned that he was the son of Graham and Sarah, and had a 2-year-old sister named Rain. Sarah was Graham's second wife, and from his first wife, Graham had 2 sons, making Kane the 3rd son of a high-ranking noble. Graham was a margrave who oversaw the southern part of the kingdom and defended it against monsters with the help of adventurers. Kane grew excited upon hearing about magic and such things, but he was still too young to try it out. Showing his eagerness to study, Kane asked for books about magic, but his request was denied because a person must be baptized at the age of 5 before they can use magic. Despite that, Kane had already secretly learned a basic spell. He then began studying the kingdom's history and learned how it was founded by the first king named Iya, who had a Japanese name, and that all sorts of fantasy beings existed in this world. 2 years passed quickly, and the time came for Kane to go to the church to be baptized. After baptism, everyone received a status window, and Rain demonstrated how hers looked. Kane noticed a certain title in Rain's status, but she quickly hid it. Soon after, they arrived at the church for blessings, and just as Kane knelt, all the statues in the church began to shine. In the blink of an eye, Kane found himself in front of all 7 gods. The god of reincarnation told him bluntly that it hadn't been necessary for him to stop that thug back in Japan. The thug would have been subdued by others, so Kane's death had been meaningless. Still, because it was a good deed, the god of earth had asked for Kane to be reincarnated in this world. Kane admitted that he liked his new life with his family, and, hearing this, all the gods, one by one, granted him their blessings. After the ceremony, Graham wanted to check Kane's status, but Kane quickly lied that he had a stomachache and ran off to see it privately. He discovered that his level was far beyond normal. Where level 5 was considered the highest, he was already at level 10. Not only that, but he had the blessings of all 7 gods and the title, God's Chosen. Thankfully, the god of creation had given him a camouflage skill to hide all his titles, but he forgot to hide his magic power, item box, and judgment skill, each of which was also overpowered. When Graham eventually found out, he told Sylvia and the butler to never speak of this to anyone else. That same day, Kane noticed a summoning book in his room and decided to try it. He successfully summoned a monster in the backyard, but Rain and Parma got caught up in the situation. Kane jumped in and saved them from the monster, taking some damage, not too serious, and then asked Rain to keep it a secret from their parents. Time passed, and when Kane turned 5, he decided to become an adventurer. Graham arranged for tutors to train him, and in his excitement to meet them, Kane jumped out the window and landed on one of his teachers. She thought he needed nursing, but it was just a misunderstanding. The 2 tutors, Millie and Na, were D-rank adventurers who took Kane to the training grounds, where they were shocked by his swordsmanship skills. Millie challenged Kane herself, but quickly grew tired. Then Kane showed them his magic power, which shocked them even more. Na and Millie were confused because this little boy had blessings from both the god of magic and the god of swordsmanship, plus an item box. Unsure of what they could possibly teach him, they asked Graham for permission to take him outside the mansion so he wouldn't accidentally destroy it. Once at a safe distance, Kane unleashed his mini fire spell, which turned out to be anything but mini, leaving the girls speechless. They assumed he'd be exhausted after casting such a large spell, but Kane still had enough MP to cast more. Suddenly, a fanged rabbit attacked them, and Cain killed it with wind bullets. It was his first kill, so he excitedly showed it to his family. Later, Nina used a search spell to locate more monsters, and Cain managed to copy the spell just by watching her cast it. Together, they killed more monsters, but when Cain tried to follow one deeper into the forest, Millie stopped him, warning that the place was filled with strong monsters and that monster outbreaks occurred every few decades. The next day, Cain went to the Adventurers Guild with Millie and Na to learn more about monsters. There, he met a cute dog-girl receptionist who found him adorable. Unfortunately, some goons arrived and began harassing Na and Millie. Cain stepped in, beat them up, and threw them out. Na was relieved that nothing had happened to him. As time passed, Millie and Na's contract to train Cain was nearing its end. As a parting gift, Cain hunted down a dragon and an ogre to create a magic bag for them. However, a soldier saw the massive destruction and assumed a monster outbreak was happening, warning the whole town. Troops followed Graham to investigate, but when he arrived at the scene, he found a handkerchief with his household emblem. On the last day of training, Cain presented Millie and Na with the magic bag they'd always wanted, capable of fitting an entire mansion, making it a national treasure. Cain even installed a security system so that only the three of them could use it, making it even more precious. Millie and Na were thrilled to receive it, and with that, they parted ways. Later that day, Graham discovered that Cain had been responsible for the forest's destruction and scolded him for a good hour and a half. Still, Cain continued adventuring and even managed to hunt down a red dragon. When he turned 10, it was time for him to travel to the royal capital for his debut in noble society. On the way, through search magic, he detected a large group of monsters attacking people. Graham sent his men ahead, but Cain arrived first and saw at least 50 monsters killing knights. He saved them all, though the knights were initially wary of him. Cain introduced himself as Graham's son, and Graham's knights confirmed his identity. Cain healed the surviving knights and stored the bodies of the fallen. When Graham arrived, he saw that the attacked carriage bore the emblem of Duke Santana. Inside were the Duke's daughter, Miss Silk, and the King's daughter, Princess Tellis, both beautiful and visibly shaken. Cain used a relaxing spell to calm them, and impressed by his bravery, both girls began fawning over him, competing for his attention. Coincidentally, both were also heading to their debut and insisted that Cain ride with them. Sitting close to him, they wouldn't allow him to sit anywhere else and even asked him to call them by their first names, refusing to take no for an answer. They stopped at an inn for the night, but Silk and Tellis didn't want to be separated from Cain. Graham tried to explain that it was inappropriate for a boy to stay with two girls, but they insisted they were still frightened after the earlier attack. Reluctantly, Cain agreed to stay with them. Both girls joined their bed with his, so they could sleep side by side, which, while a good situation for a newcomer like Cain, made him too anxious to sleep. He stayed awake all night while they cuddled him. The next day, they arrived safely in the capital, but the girls still didn't want to be separated from Cain. In front of the vice-captain of the Royal Knights, Diam von Gazard, Cain was formally thanked for saving Silk and Tellis and for returning the bodies of the fallen knights. Just as he was about to leave, Diam stopped him. He still had to meet the king. At the royal court, the king learned how Cain had defeated 50 orcs to save Silk and Tellis, and had brought back the bodies of the knights. In recognition of his bravery, the king granted him the title of Baron, 10 platinum coins, and his own mansion. Naturally, some objected to giving a 10-year-old such a title, but the king silenced them. Afterward, the king called Cain and Graham to the parlor for a private talk. Duke Eric once again thanked Cain for saving Silk and Tellis. Then, both fathers made an unexpected proposal. They offered their daughters' hands in marriage to Cain. Surprised, Cain was reminded by the king that if word got out Silk and Tellis had slept in the same bed with him, no one would want to marry them, so they wanted Cain to take responsibility. With no way out, Cain accepted the engagement to both Silk and Tellis. The girls were overjoyed and began reminiscing about what had happened that night. Until then, Take care.
Takumi is unexpectedly summoned to another world, finding himself standing before the goddess Nolan. However, the first thing she does is apologize sincerely, explaining that it was all a huge mistake. When the summoning spell is cast, it randomly selects individuals from Earth to become heroes in the new world. Takumi's life had been going well, and he was never meant to be summoned, but an error during the spell dragged him here along with the others. The mistake is blamed on the Holy Sidonia Empire, who recklessly activated the forbidden summoning spell. Because of this, Takumi was not sent to Sidonia like the other heroes, but instead to Nolan. Takumi asks Nolan if she can send him back to Earth, given that he was brought here by mistake. Unfortunately, Nolan explains that she cannot. Out of frustration over Sidonia's actions, Nolan had erased the summoning spell from the world's magic laws, making it impossible for anyone to move between worlds anymore. Worse yet, Takumi's original body had perished in the process, leaving him as a disembodied spirit. Panicking at the realization that he's a ghost, Takumi is reassured by Nolan that she has a plan. While she can't send him back, she can give him a new body and allow him to become a citizen of this world. As an apology, Nolan also offers him her blessing to make his new life easier. Takumi, with little choice, agrees to be reborn in this world, which pleases Nolan. She then instructs him to open his status screen to review his new life. Takumi is surprised to find that Nolan has given him a 17-year-old body, even though he's actually 40 years old. Nolan brushes off his concerns about the minor details and urges him to choose a job class. Takumi, not wanting to fight, opts for a production-based job rather than a combat class. Nolan then implants the job into his soul, along with several other beneficial blessings. She sends him on his way, forgetting to provide him with any tutorials. Takumi crashes into a forest upon his rebirth, and after picking himself up, checks his reflection in a nearby river. He's now a completely different person, with no.
He's kicked out of the hero's party for being useless, but it turns out he has SSS-ranked skills in everything except fighting. Kurt is a 15-year-old boy from a remote village hidden deep within the mountains, a place so isolated that no one has ever heard of it. Ever since childhood, he dreamt of becoming an adventurer. So, with hope in his heart, he traveled to the city and somehow managed to join an S-rank adventurer party. However, he was accepted only as their errand boy. While the other members of the party battled powerful monsters, Kurt was so weak that he would get knocked out before the fight even began. Despite this, he took great pride in being part of a party that the world hailed as heroes. That pride shattered one day when the party members told him he was fired. Kurt was stunned to hear the news and asked what he had done wrong. The party leader coldly replied that Kurt hadn't done anything, and that was the problem.